their challenges, right? Many caregivers take on the role with little notice. Imagine if a caregiver loses their child unexpectedly and they have two kids, right? And then all of a sudden they have to take the child in to be the primary caregiver. And then let's add if they're in senior housing, right? And most senior housing you can't have children. So now you're looking for housing that can now fit this new family. Your finances are looking different. Most people are saving up for retirement to sit on the beach, right? And enjoy the water. And that could all shift within 24 hours of you having to change your life. You don't mind stepping in, right? That's your family. But the way you operate will change.
This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Hello, today we have Jamarl Clark with us to talk about a wonderful topic called grandfamilies. And Jamarl is Assistant Director of the National Center on Grandfamilies with Generations United in Washington, D.C. He oversees various aspects of the center's operations, including engaging with grandfamilies and kinship families, ensuring the quality of publications and resources, which I can assure you, my audience, is very high. I'm most impressed. And conducting federal advocacy and leading the Kinship Navigator Collaborative. Welcome, Jamarl.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
Well, I know you've got lots of wonderful irons in the fire, so thanks for taking the time. Before we dive into your work and how we can be supportive of grandfamilies, would you be willing to talk a little bit about your own grandparents since National Grandparents Day is coming up?
Yeah. I would love to. I'm just returning off of a family reunion. So I've been with my family. I've been with my family for the last few days, and also spending time with my own grandmother. My grandparent, and then also this week is the anniversary of my grandfather's passing 16 years ago. So it gives me great joy to talk about my grandparents and how they actually inspired me to do this type of work. I definitely grew up with my grandparents being there, on top of having my own parents. But if anybody would tell you, I was always at my grandparents' house, I guess, because I'm the first grand. And if anybody's listening, usually the first grand is usually the one that gets away with a lot more and kind of get a little bit of special treatment. So with my cousins, it's about 20 of us. I am the joke. I'm like the first grand. No, my grandparents have always been instrumental in providing wisdom, guidance, supporting me in everything that I do. Every time I've achieved anything in my life, I would thank my grandparents. My grandfather, a very firm man, but and very humorous. He believed in me when I said, you know what, I want to leave North Carolina and move to DC. And he was very supportive. And I remember when I first moved to DC and I said, I don't know anybody. And he said, give it time. And then I was like, also, I'm at the bottom of my career. And he said, give it time because you'll appreciate when you make it to the top. And those words stay with me to this day, because all those things came into play. So crazy about my grandparents. Talk to my grandma almost every other day and refuse to call her around 12 to 2 o'clock because that's when the soap operas come on.
She won't take your call.
She won't take a call. Or if it's going to be really 60 seconds.
That's cute. Well, your work also involves grandparents. And tell us just in a capsule what a grand family is and how it relates to kinship families.
Yeah, yeah. So grandfamily and kinship family is interchangeable. Interchangeable. Pretty much, it's a family where grandparents, aunts, uncles, or close family friends are raising children when the parents are unable to do so. And I'm a person with numbers. I love numbers. I guess you kind of set that up with Generations United doing resources. There's about 2.5 million children are being raised by a relative or close family friend and do not have a parent living in the household. So there's 2.5 million of grandfamilies, some type of structure of it taking place in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are families where a relative is head of the household and the parent is in the household, but not heading up the household. Does that
Correct.
mean isn't the primary breadwinner?
Yeah, the primary caregiver. Yeah,
Caregiver.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
All
this
right.
is the numbers for primary caregiver when you have these type of individuals that are stepping up.
Well, I looked at grandfamilies.org and
Mhm.
it told me state by state
Yes.
how many children and grandparents are involved in this. In my state, Oklahoma, 43,000 grandparents are responsible for their grandkids. In Virginia, it's 53,000. In California, it's 235,000 grandparents are heading up these homes. I read for every one child being raised by kin in foster care, 22 are being raised by kin outside foster care.
Yes.
Um, and that kids in a kinship home always show better social, emotional, and behavioral progress than those in a non kinship foster setting. Why do you think that is? What are some of those reasons?
Yeah, I think when you have, I think there's a few things when you have someone that is familiar, if we think about it from a cultural standpoint, you have someone that you can identify with that may look like you or have some of the similar religious practices. I think that makes a big difference. I think that's why we see those numbers the way we see them. Also with those numbers that we see is those that are not accounted for informal, right? So we have those numbers, but then you have families that may have not even reported, right, that they are a grand family, or they may not know they're a grand family, right? We have words, we have definitions. Some of my background, I worked with the first housing development in the District of Columbia for grandparents raising grandchildren, a whole building of kids and caregivers, and most often they did not know they were a grand family. Like that is what their family structure was. A lot of times, the caregivers are like, we're just doing this, right? We're stepping in, we're taking care of these children to be there for them.
Jamarl, this topic, at first sounds kind of warm and fuzzy,
Hmm.
and yet there are really a lot of sad streaks through this picture, aren't there?
Yes. Yeah. Um, for sure, there are challenges, right? Many caregivers take on the role with little notice. Imagine if, a caregiver loses their child unexpectedly and they have two kids, right? And then all of a sudden they have to take the child in to be the primary caregiver. And then let's add if they're in senior housing, right? And most senior housing cannot, you can't have children. So now you're looking for housing that can
Mhm.
now fit this new family. Your finances are looking different. Most people are saving up for retirement to sit on the beach, right? And enjoy the water. And that all shifts. That could all shift within 24 hours of you having to change your life. You don't mind stepping in, right? That's your family, but the way you operate will change. So,
Sure. And um, you you are dealing potentially as a grandparent or older kin with children who are traumatized, possibly by this parent being gone, and you yourself are probably grieving.
Mm.
You may be, really shocked, or it may have been a chronic situation where the parent gradually leaves the picture. I saw in this what the Grandfamilies full report,
Mm-hmm.
which I think everybody should take a look at if you want to know more. But it talked about three kinds of grief. Um, Complicated grief, which is multiple
Mm-hmm.
losses. And that could be, you lose your familiar housing, you lose your dream of retirement or whatever, you lose possibly an adult child,
Mm-hmm.
um, you lose your, freedom in the
Yeah.
sense of you're taking on a huge new responsibility. There may be multiple adults, there may be a couple that were lost that necessitate this change. And then, besides complicated grief, there's anticipatory grief. You're
Mm-hmm.
bracing for possible loss. These families may be, there may be a parent incarcerated or in jail, you just found out, or there may be an addiction and you don't know if the adult child is going to make it
Mm-hmm.
through all
Mm-hmm.
that back to the family or not. Um, you may be unsure whether you're going to be able to keep custody of the child or children. That's a possible loss. And ambiguous grief. The
Mm-hmm.
person that you're mourning did not die, but is somewhere else and may or may not even be in contact.
Yeah.
You may
Mm-hmm.
not know if they're okay. And this is grief combined with stress and uncertainty. It's just such difficult landscape, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, to navigate.
Yeah, yeah. I think to also throw in there social isolation, right? That as a caregiver, you may not feel seen, you may not feel celebrated, especially when we talk about informal versus foster, adoptive parents, like, you receive all these services, if you're a foster kinship, right? Compared to informal when you're, just taking a child on and you don't have that extra assistance. And a lot of times what I would see was caregivers putting the children first, right? That's natural for you to do it while still not navigating their mental health, right? Their mental health wellness and how to deal with resentment, as you talk about grief, like being, like, I'm angry that this is happening because I always would have to tell people, especially grandparents, they're grandparents, but they're also parents. They're
Yeah.
working at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, and trying to navigate that, and then also public perception. You know, we love grandparents; they're very beloved, but also as a society, we may say, "Well, they're your grandchildren, they're your nieces and nephews. You should step up. You should do it," but not recognizing the supports that are needed. For the family to still thrive and be successful even if they do step up, they do need those services, support
Yeah.
services to be successful.
Yes, they do, and just the fact that they are different, they're in a different age cohort
Mm-hmm.
than other parents of their kids' peers. There may be, school and I don't know, activities, adults in charge that don't really recognize these
Mm-hmm.
grandparents as the ones in charge. They don't know how to treat them and how they fit in. They may sense that this is temporary and therefore not communicate
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as much. Um, and I can only imagine as an attorney the legal thicket that these people have to walk through,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they don't know what the outcome for the parent, the adult child, is going to be. Do I seek custody? Do I seek to terminate my child's parental rights if he's addicted or
Mm-hmm.
um,
And And I saw it happen in real time. I saw it happen, you know, I was called Mr. Clark in the building. They would say, Mr. Clark, I don't know how to navigate this because I do need SNAP, to help take care of this child. I do need services, but that would mean me interrupting what my child, right? The child that I parent brought into this world, interrupt
Mm,
their life, or it would cause a uprise and some confusion to take place. So or I financially cannot afford to do court proceedings. That is something as that takes place as well. Um, I think the thing that I love about Generations United is how we strive to inform the field. And that's why we have these resources. So when you talked about the school, we actually did a report last year about how can the school systems, how can schools, counselors better understand grand families, kinship families, and how to work with them.
mhm. Well, I'm sure that will be very, very useful and important. Um, the crisis or the culmination of a chronic problem that creates a kinship or grandfamily
Hmm.
is often not doesn't find the grandparents in a really ideal place to take this on. Your report says almost 20% of grandfamilies are living in poverty when they take on children. They hadn't planned on this, and about 50% of grandparents are still in the workforce when they take kids into their home.
Hmm.
The housing may be, as you mentioned, a retirement community. It may
Yeah.
be, oh, we're getting to live on the golf course and no one under 55 can live here. Or it may be Section 8 and they can't
Hmm.
take on more residents in the home. They may not have a vehicle.
Yeah.
Um, just, going from 2 children to 3 children, when you're planning on it, you've got to go find a vehicle that can seat, 3 car seats, and those are very expensive. And just lifting a car
Hmm.
seat into a vehicle, oh my goodness, I had trouble with that the other day with my grandkids.
And
And your report also says that about 25% of kids in this setting have experienced neglect,
mhm,
including food insecurity or substance abuse in the home
mhm,
before coming in, and about 12% have experienced physical abuse.
mhm,
And while navigating all those difficulties with a child that's come into your home, you may be dealing, like you said, with anger at a parent that would do this to
yeah.
your grandchild.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so many conflicting feelings. My heart my heart goes out to him. I've been caring for a little grandbaby that the mom, is away for 3 days leading a conference. It's a great
Mm,
career task and opportunity and honor, but that baby doesn't know that I intend all the good in the world. I could not get him to take a bottle. It
yeah.
was just,
Yeah.
I'm not mommy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they have to, these kids, even if they have been mistreated, which not the case in our family, but
Mhm.
even so, as an adoption attorney, I know that kids bond with those parents, even if there's been a difficult history,
Yeah.
and transferring that bond to someone else
Mhm.
may well nigh impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because the caregivers come in and you're trying to help the child heal, right? And you're trying to heal in the same sense. I think about I have 6 nieces and nephews. And, I had the joy of seeing them this weekend and heard uncle 10,000 times. But, but also I have sisters that, they can step back in, but I always think to myself, what if I took them in, and how do I provide them with the supports? How do I make sure they get the mental health supports? And then imagine, let's add another layer, right? What if you you have kids, right? You still have kids in the household. You can be a grandparent and still have kids in the household when you take in your grandchildren, right? And
Mhm.
now we're dealing with family dynamics. Um, I call him the great guru of grand families is Dr. Joseph Crumley, who has done a lot of work in the field, and he has done trainings on family dynamics. Like, how does it look in the household when you're not so much grandma, but you're like the parent, right? Like, how
Mhm.
do you navigate parenting, and how do
Mhm.
your children navigate
Mhm.
that, this child is not just the grandchild, but actually like maybe like a sibling.
Mhm.
Those dynamics are happening with the entire family as well, not just with the caregiver, but the entire family.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, the grandparent, this one child that has adult child who has had these children, that may not be your only child
Hmm.
that you're trying to be supportive of, whether they're in the home or not. And they may have kids.
Hmm.
There may be other grandchildren you also want to help, but here you have this very primary new responsibility. And, when you become a parent, most of the time, the rest of the world kind of celebrates, and,
Hmm.
you might be given a shower, or you might be given, you know, gifts at the hospital and some offers of support. But when this comes in this scenario, ain't nothing. It's not celebrated. It's just,
Yeah.
well, figure it out.
Yeah, because it's expected. Like, you should, that's what you should do, and that's why it's important to have support services, like we call, kinship navigators in states. That you can go to an individual. I remember when my grandma, I think there was a day when she listens to this, she's gonna be like, "You really put me out there." But it was the day she connected the dots with the work I do, when her friend daughter unexpectedly passed away, and she had to take in her two grandchildren. And my grandma was like, "What is she gonna do?" And I was like, get connected to a kinship navigator. Get connected with someone that can connect them with services. And of course, in that moment, I connected with resources from Generations United. And my grandma said, "This is what you do." I said, "Yes." But it's important to have those in place.
So, you tell us a little bit more about this Kinship Navigator program. And is it in every state? And how would a parent thrown into this connect with that?
Yeah, what you talked about, grandfamilies.org, one of Generations United websites. I would definitely go to that website and go state by state, and we have information of states and their services. That's a great way of looking. A kinship navigator is going to help you in regards to case management. It's going to help you with how to connect with the school. It's going to give you resources to pantries. It's just going to be that connector that you need to get started. And then also, one thing is, caregivers want to talk to people that actually understand them, right? That
Sure.
understand the language. They don't have to say too much. And a kinship navigator is that specialty in kinship and grand families that can better support them. So that is what I recommend. I think for the most part, most states have a kinship navigator program, that may be through a nonprofit organization. That is what they're all about. And that's why it's important on the federal level, because we do advocacy at Generation United, is for us to encourage funding for kinship navigators in the states,
Sure.
right? So they can be able to do all the work that's needed.
Now, do you have to have legal custody or be of a certain status to contact a kinship navigator and get help?
Not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. So you can be informal. Most of the time, what we see, it is informal. It's, those that are not going through the system. So that is not a barrier when it comes to kinship navigator. Mhm.
Well, I read that there's a new 2024 rule. I don't know if it's HHS or what.
Hmm.
You could tell me that supports kinship families in foster care, that lets them more easily get a status of a foster family in order to get eligibility for some of the programs that would help them.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because what we saw was families were kind of staying away, right? They was like, golly, this is a big process. I don't know about you. Anything that takes a lot of paperwork, I'm probably going to run just a little bit. But I think this really helps families if they want to look at, kinship licensing, the foster kinship, that avenue to be able to go into that direction. And it's not so much uh, obstacles to go through it, for them. So kind of looking at the paperwork, what they're answering, and how social workers work with the families and stuff. So
Mhm,
it hopefully we may see an increase of families going into that direction. But
mhm,
sometimes there's stigmas with systems, right? And trust
mhm,
with systems. That's one thing we deal with caregivers. It's like, can I trust it? So I think what's happening is systems are trying to rebuild trust.
mhm. Yeah. Well, it's a shame that has to be done, but I'm glad you recognize that.
Hmm.
Um, what are some ways that you have seen grandparents grow as they learn to head a grand family? Are there any
Yeah,
bright sides to being
yeah,
in that role?
yes. I call them. I've been saying the last few days the bright spots. I think many may describe this as a second chance, not not to just to raise kids, but to make a difference in a child's life. I think also what I've seen is they become advocates. Generations United we have an initiative called the Grand Voices, where we have caregiver advocates and almost in all the 50 states that are dedicated to advocating on this topic of grand families and kinship. And so sometimes when life throws you something, you take it and you make it sunshine and you become an advocate of it, right? Because you want other families to thrive as you want your own family to thrive. I think also we see community, right? I mean, when you have other caregivers, grandparents, aunts and uncles like yourself, you create a community of how can we support one another. Can we babysit? Can I take care of the child? I saw that definitely in the housing development. How I was like, well, why is uh, Grandma Cynthia child with you, Grandma Renee? Oh, we're taking turns picking the kids up. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay. So you create, community. And then also, I think for some, they lean in on their faith, their spirituality. I think
Mm,
those are some bright spots that happen. I see so much joy and pride than sadness. It's
mhm.
more of like, I see the resilience. I
Uh,
think that's one thing I've always admired about grandparents is the resilience they have, um,
mhm.
and caregivers, aunts and uncles that they carry and shine bright. Because when they tell you their story, you're like, oh, what the world? And they just standing so strong and tall, and they're like,
Wow.
I'm still raising him, Mr. Clark. He's 28 years old. I'm like, no, 28. Now, but there's like, no, I'm still there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Jamarl. That's so sweet. Do you find churches being helpful in this? Not just government programs and nonprofits, but churches?
Yeah, I think the faith community leans in with providing support from what I've heard and in the field, if it's through food pantries, if it's through providing respite, sometimes, caregivers just need a break. They just need to just kind of breathe a little bit. And so the faith community stepping in that capacity, along with nonprofit grassroots organizations, you know, those are very instrumental, and I think that's why it's important for communities to know about this particular group so they can learn and then also provide support, you know?
Hmm.
And it helps the caregivers to feel supported and that they're a part of the community than feeling like they're an outsider.
Hmm. Is this help available to people who are on a military deployment?
So I'm not sure of that, but it may be, it might be worth, individuals looking into it, probably talking to like a kinship navigator to see what
Hmm.
supports may be in place. But I'm unsure about that.
Okay. Um, well, I want to close with a couple of personal recommendations. What are a couple? Hang on. If you could say something to a grandparent facing stepping into this role of heading a grand family, what would you say?
I think there's a few things I would say. It's not your fault.
Hmm.
You didn't cause this change. You're not being punished. You are deeply loved. You know, you stepped in this because, you matter. You stepped in this with the children. You matter. They matter. You can talk about your feelings. And I'll say it again, you can talk about your feelings. It's okay to be sad, angry, confused. You don't have to hide it. And I think the last thing I would say is you're not alone. I gave this stat, just 2.5 million. Lots of kids are being raised by grandparents, aunts, and family friends. There's many
Hmm.
celebrities that have been raised by, caregivers. And then also I just say, take care of yourself. I always would say this. I know I said that was the last thing. This is the last thing.
Okay.
When you take care of yourself and you thrive, your family will thrive as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I would say those words.
That's beautiful. What would you say to a child
Yeah.
that's entering this setting?
Yeah. I would say it's okay. I would say some of the same similar things. It's okay to be sad, angry. You have a family member there that you can talk to, and to let them know how you feel. And you're not an outsider. Many other children like yourself are being raised by their grandparents as well. So that I think that's what I would say is allow yourself to feel, because if we know how you feel, then we can know how to redirect that and get the proper supports to ensure that you can thrive and be successful.
Hmm.
And I know lots of young people I've worked with that have told me resilient stories about being raised by their grandparents or other caregivers. So I know I was just a couple of weeks ago, Generation United had its 23rd Intergenerational Conference, and we had a panel of young people. And one of the young people on the panel that was raised in kinship was Miss Kentucky.
Well,
So Miss Kentucky was sitting on that panel and just speaking about how much of a difference it made in her life.
yeah, we had four generations living in my home growing up for much of the time, and it really enriched me. It was
Hmm.
hard, um, and I didn't always see all the benefit at the time.
Like most of us. Yeah.
And as a kid, I wasn't looking to how can I be a blessing in this situation.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it was good for me, and it it's it can be a beautiful beautiful thing. Um, I was caring for another grandchild when the mother had to be gone for a week. Both parents had to be
Hmm.
gone, and this was a little bit a toddler.
Hmm.
Um, and the first night that I had him, he really at bedtime he felt it. He couldn't put it in words, but I could tell
Hmm.
why he was throwing himself on the floor and crying. And I just said, "You miss your mommy." And
Hmm.
he just kind of looked at me And I said, I miss her too.
Mm-hmm.
And he just calmed down and let me, hold him. And I also said, it's going to be okay. You'll see. And I found that telling little kids, you'll see,
Mm-hmm.
it reassures them. It conveys my confidence, but also lets them know that I'm counting on
Mm-hmm.
them to, it's important that they are going to
Yeah.
recognize what I already
Mm-hmm.
recognize.
Mm-hmm.
When you
Yeah.
say it's okay, that's different from saying you'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Another thing that I think is important to convey to kids is not necessarily saying this, but our whole attitude
Mm-hmm.
is your needs are okay with me.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
okay that you have needs. It's okay that you have a dirty diaper and you need help. It's okay that you need help standing up at the level of the sink.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're less than. I'm comfortable with the fact that you have needs.
Mm-hmm.
It helps the child feel secure. And just to say, I like you, not
Yeah.
just I love you, but I like you.
I like you. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would imagine it would be comforting to hear we're all in this together.
Together. Yes.
Doesn't mean we're all doing that great of a job, but we're all in this together.
Together.
We're
Mm-hmm.
figured out together. And another thing I think would be important is to be careful about what the child overhears.
Mm.
You're going to have to be on the phone or in an office with them in tow, advocating, as you say, or you may be pouring out your heart about how hard it is, but just to be aware of not doing that in front of the child
Oh, yeah.
unduly.
Yeah.
My husband, as a doctor, without telling me specific things, has been really troubled by some things that parents will say to him in front of their child.
Mm-hmm.
Negative things
Mm-hmm.
about what a burden this is, and their belief that the child will not turn out well. This kind of thing.
Mm.
We have to protect kids from
Yeah. Words have power. Yeah.
dark things. And maybe develop a little ritual with
Mm.
the child, like, put I'm going to put some Brave in your pocket, or let's
Mm.
put a kiss in your pocket for as you go to school, or
Mm.
let's have a secret handshake if it's an older kid,
Mm.
to kind of form a little identity with this new kind of household, so that they feel like, okay, we're a team.
Yeah.
You know, have you observed some things like that working?
Yeah, I have, having a handshake, having, a ritual, or continuing rituals, right? Like, every birthday, we go to Burger King, with mom. And then, the caregiver continuing that tradition of going to Burger King, when it's a birthday, you
Mhm.
know. I was laughing at the secret handshake I have one with my nephew. But those things, they help a child to identify with being connected. And I think what you're also speaking to is safety, right? Feeling safe. I think even as adults, we want to feel safe, but imagine for children, they want to feel safe. Because I'm always telling people, you never know what they've heard until they get older and they start talking and say, "Oh, I
Mhm.
remember that." Because my parents, they're like, "You remember that?" I'm like, "Mhm, I was listening." So I think you definitely gave some great points there. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You're an encouraging fellow, and I'm so glad you're in the place and the work that you're in, Jamarl. And if someone wants to know more about your work and what the organization offers, how can they reach out?
Yeah, they can go to our website, Generations United, gu.org. It's that simple. Two letters, gu.org. You can go to our website. And of course, you can see all the reports. It's funny. I love when people quote from the reports because I actually work on that report. uh, thank you. Thank you. So you can go there. You can see many resources. You can learn about our Grand Voices initiative. You can also go there to contact me as well. My email is jclark, JCLARK at gu.org. You can go there and contact me as well. And I think the biggest thing that I tell people is awareness, right? We get the word out that grand families, kinship families, they're here and they need support and they need love as well.
Mhm. Well, let's all, surround these people with all the love we can, whether it's, giving them our car seat that our kids just grew out of, or sports gear, or offering to carpool, or do some laundry, teach that grandparent how to order grocery store delivery when they haven't used that, app very much, things like that. Take a grandchild out on an outing that the
Mhm.
grandparent doesn't have energy to do. All those little things can be such a blessing to both generations, all
All
generations.
generations, yes.
Thank you so much, Jamarl,
Thank
and
you.
good luck with all your work.
Thank you so much.